Good morning and welcome back to our live election broadcast here at The Londoners. I'm Bridie Monaghan.
I'm Rob Thornton.
And I'm Honor Crean. Labour has just gained their 200th seat of the night. There's been huge share of votes across all parties though, which is surprising, and they're only up about 38%. The Conservatives, however, are hemorrhaging. They are down 20%.
Losing votes to all parties, really.
We're going to take a look at Islington North. Now, this is Jeremy Corbyn's, where he's been running as an independent candidate this time round rather than running for Labour. Now, he received 24,120 votes and Labour only got 16,000. Now, he did actually have 26,000 votes in 2019, so he has lost a couple of thousand there, but he has received his seat. What I quite liked about the announcement was it was a huge applause when Jeremy's number was announced, and before they announced the Labour number, someone shouted, "Unlucky, mate!"
Yeah, a big loss for Labour
there,
losing Jeremy Corbyn and having him run independently. Earlier we heard from Rosa Gatz in Carlsharlton and Wallington, and we now have an interview from her with the winning Lib Dem candidate Bobby Dean.
Yourself?
My name's Bobby Dean. I'm the new MP for Carlsharlton and Wallington.
How are you feeling tonight?
I'm pretty humbled, to be honest. It's a big thing. People from families like mine don't often end up in politics, so I'm feeling quite a sense of responsibility for all that as well. But yeah, excited and ready to get on with the job.
So what are your plans for the next 5 years?
Well, working on the priorities that people spoke to us about on the doorstep. Number one being the future of the NHS. In particular for us, it's our local hospital, St Helier. The future of that's been up in the air for far too long. We need a new building on the site of St Helier. Cost of living crisis, still a priority for everybody. People are really struggling. And we've been campaigning a lot on the state of our local river and the pollution levels in the Wandle, and we want to clean up the river too.
And what do you think the Lib Dems position over the country is going to be like tonight?
Well, it's looking like it's going to be much better than it was before. We could have a record result, we're not sure. It's certainly going to be bigger than we've had in the last 3 or 4 elections. That's exciting. I took a quick sleep in between the count and coming here, so I've not seen the full unveiling of where we're going to be yet, but it looks like it's going to be a really exciting night for us, and we could sort of double, treble, maybe even quadruple our seats.
Just to give you a sense of how quickly things are moving here this morning now, I think we've just had 10 Labour seats come up since we've been live with you. That was, of course, Rosa Gatz speaking to the winning Lib Dem candidate Bobby Dean in Carlsharlton and Wallington. I can confirm also that Paul Collar has won his seat for the Lib Dems in Wimbledon too.
Moving over, Luke Taylor in Sutton and Cheam is a Lib Dem candidate. We had an interview with him, so we're going to go live there now.
Really excited to be able to get to work this morning, trying to get a better deal for all the residents of Sutton and Cheam.
And what policies are you prioritising in the upcoming 5 years?
So as a councillor, I've dealt with a inbox full of residents struggling with challenges due to the cost of living crisis, due to the energy crisis, and my job as MP now is to try and fix the causes of those problems, to work hard to get a better deal for local government funding, for our police and for our NHS, and that's going to be the core of my work, and that's what we want to be providing over the next 5 years.
And finally, how are you going to be celebrating?
I'm going to go to bed and potentially not knock on any doors tomorrow, which will be a pleasant surprise.
And we have just seen that Diane Abbott has kept her seat in Hackney North and Stoke Newington there.
So we're going to look at a couple of Labour seats now that have been held or gained, but they are losing the voting share again. We were discussing earlier about how tonight isn't really a vote for Labour, it's looking as a vote against the Conservatives with the way that Conservatives have lost their voting share. Firstly, in Croydon East, it has been held by Labour. Natasha Irons has received just over 18,500 votes, but it means they've lost a 5% share, with Reform UK gaining there an 11% share in that constituency in Croydon East. And then we move to Tottenham. Now Now, the Shadow Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, has kept his seat in Tottenham. He did have a 30,000 margin in 2019. That has dropped now to only having 23,000 votes, which means they've lost a 20% share in Tottenham, Labour have, whilst keeping that seat. The Greens have gained almost 15% though there. So that just gives a perspective of whilst they're keeping their seats, they're still losing voters as well.
And Greens rising as well.
I think Labour's only up 1% in terms of their actual voting, which is surprising, but actually not considering how much has gone Green over the last, 2 hours or so. Now, we're going to move on to our top headlines. These are our national headlines. There has been a big surge in Reform. There's been 2 Reform seats gained. Richard Tice for Boston and Skegness, as well as Nigel Farage in Clacton. On top of that as well, we are seeing that the Defence Secretary, Grant Shapps, lost his seat, but Ian Duncan Smith has retained his, as well as Labour's Keir Starmer, Angela Rayner and Rachel Reeves have retained their seats. Ed Davey not only has managed to paint quite a lot of the map gold, has also managed to keep his seat as well, and gave a rousing speech where he said he was doing it for his constituents. Turnout in seats that have been declared so far has been down since 2019, which again is not surprising given what you were saying to us earlier whatsoever. And also Rochdale George Galloway has lost his seat and it's gone back red. Let's move over to you, Bridie. You can tell us a bit about Nigel Farage.
Yeah, just to add on to that, you saying about voting kind of going down. I've spoken to so many people over the last few days who it's been very last minute and they've not known who to vote for and have been kind of really on the fence this year. Nigel Farage has become an MP for the first time ever after running in 8 general elections. He is the second candidate elected for the Reform UK party, and he pledged to bring private investment, tourists, and put Clacton on the map. He was said to say half the vote is anti-Conservative vote. Believe me, folks, this is just the first step towards something that's going to stun all of you. He then said, I think what we've achieved in these few short weeks is extraordinary.
I think the only bit of Farage's speech that I can agree with, and I never want to agree with Farage on anything, is that it does feel like this is an anti-Conservative vote. This doesn't feel like it's a vote for Labour. It feels like it's tactical voting. We're seeing a lot of that in the polls, with Labour being down, Green being up. So it will be interesting after this to see what exactly people are feeling about this election, even if it has gone Labour, which it looks like it's going to.
By the way, guys, just to let you know while we're live on air, they are about to announce the Portsmouth North result as well, which is Penny Mordaunt for Conservatives, so we will bring you that as soon as that has been confirmed. Also, Rishi Sunak has just arrived in his constituency in Richmond up north as well, so I'm sure we'll be receiving that result soon, so we will bring you that once we have it. But just to let you know, Labour have received their first big victim of the night, their shadow cabinet minister, Jonathan Ashworth, in Leicester South, has lost his seat to an independent candidate by 979 votes. So, yes, Showkat Adam had 14,739 and Mr. Ashworth only had 13,760 votes. So that is what happened in Leicester. But looking at Portsmouth North, I can't see the exact figures, but it does look like Amanda Martin for the Labour Party has received more votes than Penny Mordaunt for the Conservative Party.
Well, that is the first big victim of the night for the Conservatives, although hopefully not the last. Jeremy Hunt has yet to declare in his constituency what's going to happen next.
Just taking a quick look there, in Portsmouth, that is a loss of 28.4% of the votes for the Conservatives. The Labour have gained 7.9%, Conservatives have lost 28.4% of the votes, and Reform are up 20.4% of the vote there in Portsmouth North. I know not London-centric, but a big, big constituency there.
Absolutely. Just to bring it back slightly to some of our London constituencies, we now have a short video from one of our reporters, Georgia Bianchi, reporting from Islington North and Islington South. No, we don't. We don't have that right now.
Ilford.
We're Ilford North and Ilford South, sorry.
Centre where the 2024 general election counts for the Ilford North and Ilford South constituencies are taking place. So the atmosphere is quite tense, while the Ilford South constituency seems to be a Labour safe seat, with Labour candidate Jazz Athwal predicted to win by a landslide majority. The Ilford North seat is a bit more contested. So Shadow Secretary of State for Health and Social Care, Wes Streeting, is the current MP holding the seat, and he hopes to be re-elected, though he's facing some challenge from British Palestinian Liam Mohammed, who relinquished her membership of the Labour Party last year and is now running as an independent. Wes Streeting is not here yet, though Liam Mohammed has just recently arrived, and we're looking to get some interviews soon. Now, the counts are coming to a close and results are expected to be announced at 4 a.m. Stay tuned to find out more.
Bye, slide.
That was Georgia Bianchi there. Just to confirm, that was Ilford North and Ilford South. Apologies, I got that wrong.
We've been talking about lots of constituencies tonight.
We were talking about Jeremy Corbyn earlier. And speaking of, Georgia did just touch there, that was another ex-Labour candidate running independently this year. And hopefully we're going to be seeing those results come in very shortly. But for now, I would like to welcome Maddie Sherritt into the room.
Hello.
Honor has just popped out. Maddie is joining us. You've been over at Putney and Battersea?
Battersea, Tooting and Putney, yes. So the Wandsworth count.
How was it? What was the feel in the room?
Buzzing atmosphere. It was very warm, but there was a lot going on. A lot of reporters, John Bercow, watching over people counting, doing their own. Because what happens is, something a lot of people don't realise is you're running around the room and all the parties have actually got people counting the votes, sort of making preemptive counts before we've even got the final hearing. So all the parties are going mental, reporters are going mental, and yeah, it's just great. It's just great atmosphere. And three women for Southwest, 3 female leaders, which is great to see. And some raucous crowd, to be fair. So when Fleur was on giving her sort of finale speech, we had a lot of booing in the crowd, a lot of shushing, and then it was sort of the pinnacle of the victory was highlighted by Dr. Rosanna, who gave this impassioned speech about how we're going to turn this around and make a huge impact as 3 women on the stand. So very emotive, very emotive.
Very emotive. What was it like chatting to John Bercow?
He's a great guy. Very, very, happy to be there. He said, all these great things just about how the Tories were disastrous and had no shame in saying it. I've got the soundbite ready to go. Would you like to hear it?
Yeah, I'd love to hear it, please.
Yes. Let's have it. So this was John.
The most corrupt, incompetent and mean-spirited set of ministers that I've witnessed in my lifetime.
That was Bercow on the Conservative decade leadership. Damning
words there.
Damning words. But it was a fantastic evening just to see what was going on, really. But a mixed thing. And then the Greens also had some wins as well. So I spoke to Fergal, who was running, and he had very good pledges about we're in a very green part of London, and he had a lot of good pledges about just making routes greener, less emissions, things like that. But he had I think he tripled his seats. He said, not tripled his seats, tripled his votes. It
wasn't just at your count though. I think we've been seeing across the board tonight that the Greens have been pushed up to second in the vote in a lot of London constituencies.
Yeah, I do think that has got something highly to do with Gaza as well, and the way that they've obviously not supported either side, whatever. But yeah, it was a really, really emotive evening, for sure.
Absolutely. It was interesting to hear. I was at a hustings last week for and Save Wimbledon Park was a huge topic of debate. I know it was at the Putney hustings as well. Do you think green coming in has got more to do with those green spaces that we have in southwest London too?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I mean, Fergal was sort of saying that a big priority for people in the southwest of London is that we want to preserve these spaces. He said one big concern of the ward is air pollution. Just growing pollution around Clapham Junction, you know, that really busy stretch, Putney High Street, just significant places where there's been some stats. Fergal's a scientist, so he was giving me all these spiels of numbers, and I was, you know, hearing it all. It was very interesting. But yeah, I think they've got some really progressive views, and I think people are keen for that. Our post-conservative decade, anyway, for sure.
Absolutely. You're going to be able to see more of Maddie's work and the rest of our team who are out at the counts, bringing you these results as they come in over on our live blog. You can also get involved with the conversation on our Twitter at Londoners News. The hashtag, in case you have forgotten it, is hashtag Londoners Vote 2024. It's been a great evening so far.
It has, and we're going to be back a little bit later. And just looking, Labour now have 240 seats, which means they only need 86 more.
86 more.
86 more. Of course, the polls were predicting more, but when we come back at 5 a.m, Labour may have those seats, and we may have confirmation of our new government.
How amazing is that?
Yeah, I'm getting chills.
Chills.
I might just be tired, but I am. I'm exhausted.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
No worries.
It's great to hear from you.
Thanks for having me.
And we will be back at 5 a.m. Good morning. If you are joining us for the first time, this is your live broadcast of election night for 2024 here with the Londoners. We do actually have sunrise now. It's a beautiful sunrise. The sun is coming up on a new day, and we can confirm that we do have a Labour government and Labour Prime Minister that has just been calculated and has been confirmed.
It has been confirmed. However, before it was confirmed, Rishi Sunak, when elected back into his constituency, Richmond in Yorkshire, conceded that the Labour, that Starmer had won and Labour had won this election. He will not hand in his resignation. He's made it very clear that he will be back in his home constituency to look after his constituents. So any kind of questions over whether he was going to resign on Friday have been put to rest.
Yeah, he did kind of say in his speech that he takes full responsibility, which was so interesting to hear. You can join in with the conversation in the comment section on our YouTube video here, or you can follow along with this chat on Twitter, hashtag Londoners Vote 2024 and at Londoners News. I'm Bridie Monaghan.
I'm Rob Thornton.
And I'm Honor Crean.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning. As much as the national picture might not be looking great for the Conservatives, they have actually managed to hold on to 8 seats within Greater London,
which is better than the polls predicted as well.
It is, yeah.
It's not all doom and gloom. That's probably not the right phrase to use.
Maybe not quite that yet.
But we will see. There's still plenty more seats to be confirmed. We're going to take a look at some more seats in London, starting off with Finchley and Golders Green. That is a Labour gain. Sarah Sackman has won 21,857 votes, which is a 20% gain of the vote share. Now remember, this is the biggest Jewish constituency because statistically, so that's a 20% gain for Labour. Lib Dems have actually lost 25% of the voting share in Finchley and Golders Green.
And Dagenham and Rainham is also a Labour hold, and now with 7,000, a 7,000 Labour majority. But again, Reform went up by 17%. Also, Wimbledon has there's been a landslide win for Paul Kohler. He won with 24,790 votes, winning by 12,000 votes there. I believe we have an interview now from our reporter Ruth Stainer, which was done at the count.
How does it feel to have won?
It feels really exciting, of course, and having lost in 2019 by 628 votes, we've been working on this ever since that day we lost almost 5 years ago.
And how do you think the political landscape has changed in those 5 years? What new issues and concerns have your constituents been raising since?
Well, they're hugely worried about the cost of living crisis, the health, the NHS and the care crisis. These are things which are really worrying them. The climate crisis, the sewage in our rivers, the lack of community policing. These are all issues that really worry people in Wimbledon. And what I must do now as a Member of Parliament is provide a constructive but critical opposition to a Labour government who will be addressing these issues, and we need to keep them on the straight and narrow and keep them honest.
What do you think the broader significance is of you winning in London generally?
Sorry?
What do you think the broader significance is of you winning in London generally?
I think it shows that London is a liberal city, and the southwest of London, it personifies that. I will be a Liberal MP fighting for liberal values across the capital of the country and the world.
And what makes Wimbledon unique? Why is Wimbledon such a special place for you?
Because it's a diverse community with lots of opportunity and people who are outward looking, who embrace the world, who embrace Europe. People who didn't want Brexit and now want to re-engage with Europe. All these things are important.
And how did you feel coming into the election? Were you confident that the Lib Dems could win?
Yes, we always knew we were the main challengers to the Tories. We carried on saying that, and we've proved that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So nice.
Thank you so much to Ruth there. We have just been watching up on our screen at the moment. We've just been seeing a speech as Keir Starmer talks to voters in London.
This is for the first time in a long time we have a Labour leader. If you're just tuning in now, Keir Starmer has officially been elected as our next Prime Minister. So Starmer's making a speech right now. You can head over to any of those major channels to see what he's saying. It seems quite a rousing speech from the leader of the Labour Party this evening. Obviously, landslide majority, although not in London, as we've been discussing. Conservatives have managed to hold on to their seats in London. However, a Conservative who has not managed to hold on to his seat is Jacob Rees-Mogg.
Yes, just announced in Somerset, lost his seat.
To Dan Norris. Very, very exciting, one could say. But yes, Jacob has lost his seat. If we move back over, though, to a more kind of London-centric view for a second, we can see that Kensington and Bayswater has held Labour with votes, with 40% of the vote and 17,025 votes in total. But the Lib Dems were down by 13.2%, which does not hold with the trend that we've been seeing over the course of this election so far. The only bit that we could really agree with, which Farage said earlier, was that this does seem to be an anti-conservative election rather than a pro-Labour election. Labour have only managed to get 1% of the vote more than they were expecting, whereas you can see huge rises across other parties, which is come maybe not as a shock to us here.
I mean, I've gone purely by the polls, and looking at what the polls have predicted, then at the moment the votes have seemed to pretty much reflect what the polls were saying, bar one or two results. They've pretty much been bang on. Now, we're going to jump to the Basildon count now, because earlier on we were talking about a couple of really close margins from previous elections. The Basildon count has been the closest count that we have seen so far tonight. They actually had to do a recount because the end result, there was only 20 votes in it. That's 0.05% of the vote. Now, Basildon was won by the Conservative chairman Richard Holden against Labour's Alex Harrison, 12,905 votes to 12,885 votes. That's just 20 votes. That is the narrowest of margins.
Yeah,
it's by a hair.
There was also a very narrow escape for Labour Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting in Ilford North. They won with 15,647 votes, with close competition from independent candidate Leanne Mohammed with 15,119 votes. Some very, very close calls this evening.
It just goes to show, though, that every vote matters. And
really
that's why it was so important for everyone to go out and cast their vote. And I spoke about the polls and about how most things have been correct. One place where the polls have been wrong tonight is in Croydon South. Now, it was predicting that it would go to a Labour gain. However, the Conservatives have held their seat in Croydon South. Chris Philp has gained 19,757 votes, which gave him a 40% share of the vote. But that is a 14% loss compared to 2019.
East Ham, we know, has now had a Labour hold. Stephen Timms got 19,570 votes there, which was a 51% of the vote. However, compare this to 77% in 2019, just demonstrates the loss of voting share in certain areas. Independent Tahir Mirzar and the Green Party made quite a few gains in that area as well.
I think it just goes to show that we were discussing this earlier, that in some constituencies Labour made big gains in their voting share, but in other constituencies, even when they've held their seat, they've actually made losses within their votes as well.
And being followed up by Green Party as well. It's that reoccurring trend that we're having within London constituencies this evening.
Really exciting times in politics. Also, we've just been told that there's going to be a recount in Chelsea and Fulham, which is Greg Hand's seat as well.
Ah, yes.
Controversial Greg Hands, who is under scandal for stationery-related matters.
The pen thief.
The pen thief. If we shift our attention over, though, to the national picture for a second, Jeremy Hunt has managed to retain his seat in Godalming Ash, only with about 1,000 votes, give or take. He took the win with 23,293 versus his Labour counterpart with 22,402. But let's look a little bit more broadly here for a second. The Scottish National Party has done really badly, losing 21 seats this election. The biggest swings have been in Falkirk, where Labour Falkirk, and also Glasgow South. They've also lost, the SNP have also lost to Labour, which is quite shocking in many respects. East Lothian as well has also gone Labour as well. Voter turnout this year has also notably declined. So as we were saying earlier, every vote really does count, but it's dropped to 58.7%. And in 2019 it was 67.3%, which was still a drop from 2017, but it's been a 7.5% decrease, which is very concerning.
We were saying earlier how we've all kind of noticed just in our day-to-day lives in the last couple of weeks how frustrated and torn people are. People really don't know who they're voting for this year. I actually spoke to a member of the Save Wimbledon Park campaign at the Wimbledon hustings last week, and they said this is the first vote that they have kind of cast at a general election where they've really not known who they're going to vote for right down to the wire. So I think that speaks volumes.
I think also what speaks volumes, and this obviously is not confirmed yet, but this is the first time we've had a general election with voter ID. So there are going to be questions around how much voter ID has constricted people from voting this election, but that's not confirmed in terms of any numbers yet. No one has come out with anything, but it's definitely been a controversial new policy which has been brought in.
Something to look into for certain.
Yeah. I think also the other thing that's been quite shocking this election is 8 cabinet ministers have lost their seats, which is record breaking. But the Liberal Democrats have had substantial increases with 28 seats. They have gained 28 seats, which is surprising a little bit. Compared to their losses that they've definitely been experiencing more recently. And in terms of the sharers of the vote this year, from about 415, we've got about the idea that they've received about 10% of the votes this year, whereas Labour has only received 37% of the share of the vote. Again, not a strong majority. Again, this probably has been more about voting Conservatives out than necessarily voting Labour in. So we'll see what Starmer does with that knowledge and how he seems to move forward with it.
Absolutely. Just bringing it back locally right now, we are here in Twickenham reporting for the Londoners live for your election coverage today, and we actually have a video from Hannah Rajabali in Richmond Park and Twickenham. The first interview that you're going to see is Sarah Olney in Richmond Park, then on to Munira Wilson, the MP for Twickenham.
Huge congratulations. How are you feeling?
I am feeling quite overwhelmed, actually. It's a huge result, and I just feel so grateful and proud that the people of Richmond Park have re-elected me to be their MP.
Super, and you've increased your majority, by 10,000. How?
I know. It's really, it hasn't really sunk in, but I mean, I think, it's such a privilege to be the MP for Richmond Park. It really, really is. And to think that people have, come out and voted for me this time around on the basis of my record, it's really special, and I'm really, really grateful.
Thank you. And just finally, the exit poll also has predicted a huge surge in Lib Dem seats across the country. How are you feeling generally, just for nationally for the Lib Dems?
I am so delighted. We're back. As a major political force in the UK. We've had a tough few years, but we are completely back. We've run a really brilliant campaign, a really optimistic, focused on the issues campaign, and I think people have really responded to that. I cannot wait to meet all my new colleagues when I go back to Parliament next week, and I'm so excited and grateful that people have voted for the Liberal Democrats across the country today.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Huge congratulations. How are you feeling?
Elated, humbled, overwhelmed. I'm just truly grateful to the residents of Twickenham for putting their trust in me in such huge numbers today.
And how are you feeling? After the exit poll, the Lib Dems have also been surged. There's predicted to be, over 50 seats. How does that feel nationally?
Yeah, absolutely delighted. We're taking Conservative constituencies all across the country, and I think, again, we're just humbled that millions of voters across the country have put their trust in Liberal Democrats. They've elected strong local Liberal Democrat champions to represent them, fighting on the issues that people care about. We've got health and care at front and centre of our manifesto, along with ending the sewage scandal and the cost of living crisis. And I think people have responded to that in droves, as we can see from the results across the country. And we're just absolutely delighted, and we're determined to hold this new Labour government to account every day in Parliament.
Super, thank you. And just finally, starting with the new Parliament, what are the key issues that you will want to be focusing on?
Well, I want to continue working on many of the issues that I was working on in the last Parliament, not least children's mental health, which is in crisis not just here in Twickenham but right across the country. I want to see children a far greater priority for the new government because they've been utterly neglected by the last government.
Some great interviews for you there. Just to draw you away from that for 2 seconds, we have just heard from our reporter George Nash that Uxbridge and South Ruislip are commencing in a recount. That is Boris Johnson's old seat there, so we will be keeping a close eye on that coming out shortly. And we are now joined by Hannah in the studio, who put together those interviews. How was the feel at the count in Twickenham?
It was absolutely ecstatic for the Liberal Democrats. I mean, it was expected that the Liberal Democrats were going to hold those two constituencies, but just the feeling, Sarah only increased her majority by 10,000, so increasing from 7,000 to 17,000, a massive win. And definitely I think that Zach Goldsmith no longer standing as a Conservative candidate there helped. But in both constituencies, the Conservative vote decreased by almost 20%. So just a really, really massive hit to the Conservative vote in both those constituencies.
So we heard you right, 10,000 has been the increase in the Liberal Democrat vote. And how did you feel being there this evening? What was the energy like?
It was very stressed to start off with. I was speaking to the Labour candidates there, and it was quite obvious that they weren't going to do so well because it was obviously going to be a Liberal Democrat vote, but obviously bolstered by the exit poll that came out. Also the Reform candidate in Twickenham was also feeling quite good, obviously after the exit poll as well, so quite energetic. But really, as it was getting closer and closer to the vote, the energy around the two Liberal Democrat candidates, and when they announced their two victory speeches, it was really, really powerful. So many cheers, and just also just because of the Liberal Democrats have done so well nationally. So I think just being able to really reflect that in both of their wins, it was just really, really great for them.
Did they have anything to say on the sort of campaign direction for Ed Davey and the Lib Dems this year? I'm really intrigued to see what the rest of the Lib Dem candidates thought.
Well, they always say they don't take themselves too seriously, but they take their policies seriously. So I think they were quite, clearly it worked, had an impact. I mean, increasing, their seats by, I think it's like almost 40. That's a huge success. So I definitely think props to Ed Davey for all of the stunts that he did.
He's had some great days out.
Yeah,
he really
he's
has.
had a lot of fun, hasn't he? Yeah, super lots of fun.
I think they should all start doing stuff like that. And was this your first kind of count that you'd been at? Were there any surprises for you, like anything that you weren't expecting to see behind the scenes?
I guess naively, I wasn't expecting how chaotic it would be, because we weren't allowed to, film inside the actual count hall. So having to sort of like beg the candidates to sort of come in a dark alleyway to film interviews was a bit, as the Sarah Olney interview showed, it was kind of a bit suspect looking. But no, it was everyone running about the place. Trying to find candidates. There were, loads of crowds of supporters. It was really, really high energy. So I think it definitely increased. It started off quite quiet, and then suddenly, I think from 2 a.m. onwards, it started becoming, we were getting more and more results, and you could really start feeling the energy.
Can I just butt in for 2 seconds? We've had our first comment of the morning, and of the entire show. So just from Madman TV, Madman. Great show so far, guys. Watching from the early morning shift at Sainsbury's. Hi, thank you so much for commenting in. We'd love to hear more from anybody who's watching this morning, so please do comment. We will read out your comments on air. But back to you.
I think there's been quite a few watching this morning at points. It's been in the 700s. So thank you so much for tuning in. I was just about to ask you, sort of how was the room as some of the national pictures were coming around? Did you hear any reactions, like anything from behind the scenes?
Yeah, so for both Labour candidates, there was a lot of like cheers. There were still cheers when they got their results, but obviously I think having received less than 10,000 votes, it was it wasn't like exactly the result they were expecting, but being able to hear the Labour gain after
Yeah.
Labour gain after Labour gain. I think it kind of was a bit like soothing in the kind of context of, you know, not winning those 2 seats. But I think also for the Liberal Democrats, just being able to see, you know, winning more and more seats. That
The
was
amount
really, yeah,
of
I agree.
gains that they'd had.
Exactly. So honestly, for both the Liberal Democrats and for the Labour Party, you know, they were both very, very happy.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us in the studio. We are going to be back at 6 a.m. We're keeping coming back every hour on the hour, bringing you all your election news. If you want to get involved with the conversation on Twitter, it's at Londoners News and hashtag Londoners Vote 2024. We will see you again in about 40 minutes. Good morning and welcome back to our live election broadcast here at The Londoners. I'm Bridie Monaghan.
I'm Rob Thornton.
And I'm Honor Crean.
If you are just joining us for the first time, good morning. If you're just waking up, you have missed a very, very busy evening and morning. We have been here broadcasting on the hour, every hour, all night, and we now can confirm that we do have a Labour Prime Minister and a Labour government. Breaking news.
It's been a very, very exciting night for many different reasons.
It has. Keir Starmer gave a speech to some of his London voters this morning. He said, "Tonight people have spoken and they're ready for change, to end the politics of performance and return to the politics as a public service. The change begins right here because this is your democracy, your community and your future." Very, very strong words to start his leadership there.
And Sunak was looking really disappointed this evening. He looked very forlorn.
He did.
He apologised to people.
He did take full responsibility for the way that the current elections has gone. We should say, though, that tonight's voting has kind of shown that it's not been the biggest Labour win that we thought it was going to be, but it's more been the biggest Conservative loss, really. It's Labour have won because the Conservatives have lost to other parties so grandly, haven't they?
We've seen that right across the board, and there's no doubt that this has been more about the Conservatives' losses. But also we've seen that turnout's been down again since 2019. We're down by nearly about 9% at this point.
Yeah.
We're down into our mid-50s, whereas in 2019 we were at 67%. But turnout's been low. There could be lots of reasons on this, but that's all up for speculation.
And we had another speech from Jess Phillips at Birmingham Yardley, who just held on to her Labour seat by 600 votes. She was booed on stage and then followed that by saying, "Politics is in desperate need of clearing up. And thank you for all the people in this room that have made that point clear to me." There has also been a battle in Bethnal Green between Rashina Ali and a Labour MP and an independent candidate. Both these areas have quite a high Muslim population, and I think it just goes to show that Labour are losing votes in certain areas over their stance on Israel and Gaza. We've seen that a lot over the course of the evening. In Bethnal Green, Labour lost 39.4% of the vote share that they had in 2019.
We're seeing the same thing in Queen's Park and Maida Vale. They lost a huge amount, 9.4% of the vote, but obviously not as much as 39% at all. But yeah, we've been seeing a lot of Independent and Green take a lot of the vote here, and a lot of massive losses. People are not out voting for Labour this time. They're out to vote the Tories
Especially in London, yeah.
Yeah.
There have been quite a few Tory losses. We've had Penny Mordaunt in Portsmouth, she's gone. Grant Shapps, Gillian Keegan and Jacob Rees-Mogg, they've lost their seats. Another Tory loss was in Chipping Barnet. The former Cabinet Minister, Theresa Villiers, lost her seat to Tam Tomlinson, who received 21,585 votes compared to the 18,671 for Theresa. So again, another big Tory loss.
And what we've been figuring out here is that hasn't Labour only gained 2% more of the vote? That's all that they've managed to do. They've only managed to get 2% more of the vote than what we've been expecting.
But 185 extra seats.
Yeah. We can just see on our screens as well, Labour win by a landslide there.
They've gained 392
seats. Wow.
It's record-breaking. It's definitely record-breaking.
Yeah.
And it's more than predicted. They were predicted at 170 at the beginning of the night. The biggest majority they've had is 179, and that was back in 1997 under Tony Blair. And this is almost as big as the 1924 Conservative majority.
Yeah.
So this is a really, really shocking, and the exit polls, clearly undercut them.
Yeah, and we did have some more quotes from Starmer. He promised to govern for every single person in this country. Starmer said changing the country was not like flicking a switch and would involve tough work ahead, but he promised he would move quickly to start the process of rebuilding Britain. By all means, enjoy this moment. No one can say you haven't waited patiently, he said, but use it to show to the rest of the country, as we must, that this party has changed, that we will govern for every single person in this country.
But we'd love to hear your thoughts. Please do continue to comment on our live streams, on our live blog. We want to hear what your thoughts are now that Starmer has been voted in. Are you happy about this? Are you surprised about the huge losses that Labour has taken tonight? Are you overjoyed to see that smaller parties are getting in? We want to hear from you.
You can also get involved with the conversation on Twitter at Londoners News. You can use the hashtag as well, hashtag Londoners Vote 2024, and of course follow along with our live blog whilst we're not broadcasting to you, obviously.
We do still have 59 seats to be claimed still as well, and just looking at the stats, 200 seats gained for Labour. That's 164 from the Conservatives and 36 from the SNP. So Labour have only gained seats from the Conservatives and the SNP, but 200 seats, that is pretty impressive.
It's outstanding.
It is.
And that's a loss of 222 seats for the Conservatives. Something like this we have not seen before at all.
Absolutely.
But moving over to our reporter Ruth Staines was in Morden earlier this evening and spoke with Siobhan McDonough at tonight's win for the Labour. She's been the MP there for the last 27 years. I believe that we have a clip of her there tonight.
In Mitcham and Morden, as I said, it's my 10th time of standing. I lost the first 2 times, so I do know what it's like to lose. As I said, I've been the MP for 27 years. Yeah. I worked in housing before that, and I have never seen the levels of homelessness, the use of temporary accommodation, the evictions that I see now. I am very excited that Keir Starmer's taken up one of the campaigns I've been running on, building on the ungreen green belt.
And we have Ruth joining us in the studio now. Hi Ruth. Hi. How's your evening been?
Great.
You were actually speaking to an MP there that's been an MP for 27 years.
I know, it's amazing.
Did she have much to say on her 27 years?
Do you know what? She was so humble and like so surprised that she'd won, which was so nice to see. She spoke in her speech about her sister who's died recently and how the campaign's been quite hard for her being away from her family. And yeah, just spoke about how much she really appreciates all that her constituents have been through with the cost of living crisis and how things are really hard for people at the moment, and how she just wants to drive forward under the Labour government working those problems out. She also spoke really highly about Keir Starmer in particular and how he's united the party, which was interesting to hear because not all MPs feel the same way about Keir Starmer, so that was like an interesting perspective. But yeah.
What was the atmosphere like in the room?
It was really interesting because it was the same room for Mitcham and Morden as for Wimbledon, so obviously there's two counts going on at the same time, so it's a bit of a varied atmosphere. But yeah, it was really, really interesting. That was the first one to be announced out of those two. And yeah, I don't think the result was particularly shocking for people, but I think people were amazed by how much of the vote she managed to achieve.
Were you kind of dipping in and out of whichever one wasn't chaotic?
Pretty much. It actually all worked out quite well. The only kind of like difficult thing was managing the timings of who was going to be coming into the building when, but they actually managed the counts both pretty well.
I think just before we came on air, you said, don't ask me anything too serious because I can't remember much. Does that kind of sum up the night and the fact that it's not been a blur, but has a lot's been going on?
I don't understand how I was there for like 6-7 hours. Maybe I wasn't, I can't do the maths, but like I felt like I was there for 10 minutes. Like it just blinked. It was so fast, but
we felt the same here in the studio. It's absolutely flown by.
I know.
You look great. You don't look like you've been up all night.
Appreciate that.
Did you get to speak to any other candidates there? What was their feeling on the evening?
Yeah, oh God, her name's going to escape me, but I spoke to a Green candidate and she gave me so much insightful knowledge about how she thinks young people have really connected with the Green Party in this particular election, and how obviously, even though because of the electoral system in the country, the Greens are never going to be able to get in maybe the way that she would have liked, they're really going to be making a big impact in this election. Not necessarily in the number of seats they have, but she believes their influence has really, really grown. We had a really interesting conversation about kind of young people's views on voting and tactical voting, which was really interesting.
We were discussing this earlier. It's not just in the constituency you were in. Greens across the board in London, the percentage share of the votes has proper gone up, and in a lot of constituencies, actually placing second in the vote a lot. So whilst not getting seats, a bit more of a real hold on the voters in London.
Yeah, it just has gone to show that they are contenders here, and that the people of London like their promises and the things that they're talking about.
I'd be really interested to see the percentages of young people who voted Green, because that was one thing we spoke about, and how she's trying to get more young people to come into her office and engage with her politics and engage with policies in general. And she felt like that had been achieved for the first time in this election, so I'd be intrigued to see later on this sort of stuff.
I'd actually be really intrigued to see how that's gone across the board with voting, to be honest with you. I know we are still down in voter turnout this year. However, personally, I feel like there's been a lot of kind of promoting to young people to get out and vote, but then I've spoken to older people, you know, sort of like our grandparents' generation and things like that, who have almost been of the opinion of, oh, I'm giving up, I can't be dealing with it. And it'd be interesting to see which generation it is that is kind of not coming into those polling booths.
Yeah, voter turnout in Wimbledon was 78%, which I thought was pretty impressive.
Wow.
That's high compared to the national average.
That is absolutely, that is really high.
It's definitely been like a social, I don't want to call it a social media election, but there's been a lot of activity on social media, hasn't there? Which is probably why they've been able to attract the younger generation.
I have just seen there that we've had the Secretary of State for Transport, Mark Harper-Forrest, has lost...
In the Forest of Dean.
In the Forest of Dean. Thank you.
Almost got it.
Mark Harper-Forrest. Mark Harper has lost in the Forest of Dean. That's just come through for you there.
You can blame his handwriting.
Yeah, that was the whiteboard, not me. Well, if you are still with us, thank you very much for tuning in. You can get involved with the conversation on Twitter, or if you want to comment on this video on YouTube, like the lovely David, who dropped us a comment there. We would love to hear from you. It's at Londoners News on Twitter and hashtag Londoners Vote 2024. So get involved with the chat, and we will see you again at 7 a.m.
7 a.m.
We are racking through them now. See you again at 7.
Good morning. You are tuning in this morning with the Londoners News. I'm your host, Honor Crean.
I'm Rob Thornton.
And I'm Bridie Monaghan.
And if you're just waking up and you haven't tuned in already, Labour has officially won the general election with a landslide majority. And just in, Liz Truss has lost her seat. It is the first time in a century that a former sitting Prime Minister has lost her seat. It is a historic moment, given that the seat was the 11th safest seat in this country for the Tories, and she still lost it. She made no concession speech. She walked straight off stage. Quite shocking behaviour from the former PM.
Quite a huge moment for, a former Prime Minister to immediately lose their seat. And it was 49 days, was it? 49 days?
49 days, less than a lettuce could survive, was the main talking point. She lost by 630 votes.
It was tight. We were watching it, and when we heard the Labour numbers announced, we were like, mathematically she could have done it, and then she didn't. So she was evidently disappointed.
No concession speech made. And it was quite shocking. And also, Labour taking a very safe Conservative seat really shows the majority that they are currently holding.
Absolutely. And there has been a lot of close calls this evening, and we're actually having quite a few recounts. We are currently waiting on a recount from Uxbridge and South Ruislip. For the second time this morning, they are recounting. Chelsea and Fulham has also had a recount. Greg Hands has lost his seat. There was only 152 votes in it, and it went to Labour's Ben Coleman. He won by 18,556 votes, whereas the Conservatives had 18,404 votes. Now, he is actually the 12th cabinet minister to lose their seat tonight. This seat was also once an absolute shoo-in for the Conservatives. It's such a big position to lose. Like I said, the 12th cabinet minister to lose his seat, Greg Hands. That was the stationary stealer that we were referring to earlier as well. Other cabinet ministers to lose their seats were Grant Shapps, Defence Secretary, Simon Hart, the Chief Whip, Gillian Keegan, the Education Secretary, Alex Chalk, the Justice Secretary, Penny Mordaunt, the Commons Leader, Lucy Fraser, Culture Secretary, Johnny Mercer, Veterans Minister, Michelle Donnellan, Science, Innovation and Technology Secretary, David Davis, Wales Secretary, Victoria Prentice, Attorney General, and Mark Harper, Transport Secretary. I just need to take a huge deep breath there. That is 12 cabinet ministers.
We said it was record breaking when it was 8 cabinet ministers that had lost their seat, but 12, that's
taking on we're breaking records all over the shop this evening.
We are.
Not only have we lost a previous PM for the first time in a century, we've lost 12 cabinet ministers, which is
and we are still waiting on another recount at Hendon as well. So lots of recounts going on this morning.
But let's continue with the record breaking. Labour has won City of London and Westminster for the first time ever, defeating the Conservative candidate Tim Barnes. The constituency is home of the House of Commons nonetheless. So the fact that it's going to Labour and we've got a Labour landslide doesn't seem too out of the question at the moment, and is almost quite fitting given the current set of circumstances.
Indeed, and then also we're looking at Sir Liam Fox. He has lost his seat to Labour as well. Now, he is the former International Trade and Defence Secretary, and he's been an MP for North Somerset since 1992, and he lost his seat to Labour by only 639 votes. That was Sadiq Al-Hassan. So again, small margins, but big losses for the Conservatives.
Definitely, but let's chat about those exit polls, because they haven't completely told the whole truth.
Haven't completely, but I think we said at the start of the night that the exit polls over recent elections have been 5 seats here or there, and I think they've pretty much reflected approximately what we were going to get. They predicted that Labour would have 410. They're currently sitting on 409 seats. Bear in mind we've still got 13 seats yet to be announced. Conservative, they were predicted 131. They've done worse than predicted. They're on 117 at the moment. Lib Dems have done better. They were predicted 61, whereas actually they're currently sitting on 70 seats. So a really strong night for the Lib Dems, on top of what was an already record-breaking night for the Lib Dems anyway, and we're going to discuss that in a little while. Reform haven't done as well as predicted. 13 seats were predicted by the exit polls, but only 4 seats have currently been announced yet. Currently as a party, they had the third or fourth largest majority share of the votes, and we'll explore that in our live stream later on at 8 a.m. The SNP were predicted 10, they've only got 8. The Green Party have done better, they were predicted 2, but they've got 4. And then other parties were predicted 23 and they've got 24. So the exit polls were there or thereabout. The Conservatives worse off and Reform Party worse off on those exit polls, whereas Labour and Lib Dems have exceeded our expectations.
Yeah. And just to bring it back to the Greens there as well, we've been saying throughout the night that we've definitely seen the Greens sort of like coming through in London especially, and they've been winning or getting more votes than expected, definitely in those London constituencies. So to, double what their exit poll was saying is quite substantial for them.
Can we talk a little bit about voter turnout as well? Because voter turnout has been almost record-breakingly low this time, with only 57% of the population coming out to vote, which is even lower than it was last time, which was already pretty low anyway, without only about 65% of the population coming out to vote, which was again lower than 2017 general election. So we're not seeing apathy. Well, perhaps it is apathy, but we don't know if a lot of it might be to do with voter ID, which is a new talking point, which hasn't been discussed yet by the national papers.
Yeah.
How much has voter ID affected people's ability to vote in this general election?
We were talking with Ruth earlier whilst you were away, Honor, about the fact that it feels like there has been heavy promotion towards getting young people to vote in this general election, which has been great. However, it definitely feels more unusual this time, and it feels like it's maybe older generations who are apathetic and maybe just reluctant to vote anymore. I know I've certainly spoke to a lot of people in local constituencies to Twickenham who were kind of cutting it down to the wire on making a decision on who they were going to vote for. I spoke to a woman in her 60s last week at the Wimbledon hustings who had said that this was the first election in her lifetime that she actually was really leaving it to last minute. She did not have a clue who she was going to vote for, and that was less than a week before the elections.
And we can definitely see that in the voting itself. Labour has only gained about 2% of the vote, which was much lower, and we've seen across the evening and this morning, a lot of Labour may have been winning the seats, but they've not been winning it by the majority we saw or expected. Instead, they seem to have lost a lot of the vote, up to 39% in certain constituencies. A lot of these votes going to Greens and Independents, which is surprising and shocking. However, given that this general election has been about voting out the Conservatives rather than voting Labour in, perhaps not as surprising as we first thought.
Yeah, it's been consistently said across the night that it is Conservative losing their seats to other parties more than Labour necessarily winning throughout the night.
Absolutely. And it will be very interesting to see how the last few seats pan out.
Absolutely.
Compared.
Now, we're going to be talking to William Robinson now. William has been at the Kingston and Surbiton count, where leader of the Lib Dems, Sir Ed Davey, has won his seat this evening. Thank you so much for joining us here tonight, William.
Thank you very much.
You've been in Kingston and Surbiton. How's the atmosphere there this evening?
I mean, it was quite quiet to be quite honest, because I think obviously everyone pretty much expected that Sir Davey was going to win the seat. Predictions were going to be very much like he was going to win the seat. There wasn't particularly much turnout from the other parties, apart from a small Lib Dem crew.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a very nice, very polite atmosphere. It was really good atmosphere to be around, and just people just trying to just mill around and waiting for the results. I mean, we got Ed David turned up for about 1 o'clock in the morning. I mean, by that point the counting was already underway, and we got the result about 2:45, and yes, he got returned with a substantial majority, about 70,000 majority, which
amazing.
Was
and they have won more seats than they were predicted in the exit polls. How did the celebrating kind of begin? Did you get to speak to any of the Lib Dem party?
I mean, we didn't really get much chance to be honest, because a lot of them just as soon as I think everyone was almost like on their way to the Lib Dem celebrations straight away. As soon as the speech with the result was announced, and Ed Davey gave his speech to the crowd, which I think which seemed to come very much across. He did mention all his campaign stunts, which I think we'll probably get on to in a second. But he left, and a lot of the Lib Dem crew just went with him on the way to the celebrations. But it was very. It was quite a quiet atmosphere. I think it was not particularly something that you would expect, but maybe it's just a case of this particular campaign in terms of this general election. We've seen with record low turnout, and how split the votes have been across the country. Maybe that's the case of that.
You said that he's had quite the entertaining campaign trail this year. Were you disappointed not to be seeing him, skateboarding or kayaking or something like that?
He did apologise to the crowd and to the audience when he came in, saying he didn't come in on a bungee cord or
unicycle.
Unicycle, yeah, something like that. But I think it makes perfect sense. But he did talk about when he spoke to the press quickly at the end of it, when he talked about the campaign stunts. He said, really essentially, well, it was a good way of actually getting the issues across. And he says, I don't take myself as a politician seriously, but I take the British people seriously, was his big line that came away from the speech. And I think that's why we've seen this campaign. He has been pushing a lot of these issues across, and through his campaigns, through the fact that Windermere pretty much like the first day of the campaign, or he went on did an interview in this being teacup in a theme park. And
I honestly don't know how he did that.
Me spinning things.
They terrify me. That was the worst thing ever as a child. No, don't get me anywhere near the teacups.
You mentioned he's got like a light-hearted personality. Do you think the public voted for the personality, or do you think they got behind the manifesto as well?
I think probably bits of both. I think the personality very much came through. I think he showed that very much, that light-hearted nature. So you've got to remember he's a carer. That's why he got was knighted was for his caring responsibilities, and the fact that he very much he made a very good heartfelt speech to his wife and his 2 children at the at the end of his speech, and I think very much he come across as like a very much like a very good like father figure, but also came across I think as almost like for the general public, I think it was like that uncle or that godfather that would take you on. Take
good care of you.
Take good care of you. Take you on good memories when your parents can't do so, and I think that was very effective.
Do you kind of think that's what we've been missing in politics almost? That sort of like relatable face that you can turn to and know that you're going to be in good hands, really.
Yeah, I think so. I think he very much had that. I think for the first time, I try to think back to the last times. I can't think of many politicians recently had that sort of that particular gravitas in that sort of way that would do something like that. I think we've been in a much case of more miserable, more serious politicians. Where in reality, at the end of the day, there's also it's not just be like almost like a crazy like a work culture. When in reality it should be like work and play, and I think we haven't really seen that playful side of culture. That we haven't seen in politicians, and I think that's reinforced this work culture, and that's why I think this bit has to be a. Needs to be different.
We are just finding out actually that the Uxbridge and South Ruislip recount, the second one that they have done, has come in and has gone to Labour.
That is obviously Boris Johnson's
old seat.
It is.
It's gone to Labour again.
Yeah. So that's what you can say. You've got the three previous prime ministers. Okay, Kucinich is still the prime minister for however many hours.
Yeah.
All those seats have now gone away from the Conservatives, and I think that shows very much the case that I think Labour and Lib Dems have really benefited. I think particularly Lib Dems, I think in some ways how they gained so many seats. The most amount of seats they got since 1923, which I think is just remarkable in the case of the real three-way election. Is very much a case of the fact that people just want the Tories out.
I am going to be slightly selfish right now, and I would just actually like to give a shout out to a MP from my hometown constituency who has just won their seat as a Labour Member of Parliament. That is Lloyd Hatton in Dorset South. Lloyd and I went to school together. I knew him when we were 14 years old, and he is now a Labour MP, and I just can't believe that. As a 29-year-old person, it makes me go, wow, my friends are old enough to be MPs now.
I mean,
it's been a real moment for me this evening, seeing that come in. So I'm very, very happy for him and proud of him.
I'm not going to give a shout out because I don't know any MPs. But what I would like to know is, why do you think the Conservatives have performed so badly? Do you think it's down to Boris or Rishi's actions, or something else?
I think it's a myriad of reasons. I think first thing is 14 years of conservative rule. We've always seen cases. We could see go back Labour in 1979. We see Tories in 1997. We saw Labour in 2010. Very much a case of once a party is old and tired, people get fed up with them and just they completely capitulate and they get booted out and they lose so many seats. But but usually a case that we're seeing, they would usually lose about 100 or 150 seats. I mean, I think go back to 1987, everyone's talking about 1987, and John Major, who was actually my MP at one stage, he lost 178 seats in 1997, and that was considered catastrophic. Sunak we're looking at 240 odd seats for Sunak, which I think is ridiculous.
It's massive, isn't it? It just kind of goes to show, like you said, isn't it? Like people are tired of seeing the same sort of like copy and paste Member of Parliament. So let's have a little recap here. We've had some recounts in the last couple of hours.
We have.
Where Conservatives have lost their seats to Labour. We now have a Labour government going forward. We have a Labour Prime Minister in the form of Sir Keir Starmer. What else has been going on?
We've had Conservatives lose over 200 seats to Labour. We have had a lot going on. It's going to take me quite a while to digest it. But what we're going to do is get our heads together and talk about it in our 8 a.m. show.
We are going to talk about it in our 8 a.m. show. Personally, my highlight of the last 24 hours has been Elmo getting 19 votes.
I genuinely didn't come here tonight thinking I was going to see
Elmo get any votes.
I think it's just. I think what the thing has been about this whole evening, and I think one thing that we have seen, as you mentioned, of course, we've seen a record low turnout, but also how. I mean, I think we're going to see very much case with the Lib Dems, particularly, and with Reform UK getting a few seats as well. I think we're going to see a massive push for proportional representation.
Yeah.
I think that will be the big issue that we're going to see in the next election over the next 5 years because of that strong Lib Dem force.
Absolutely. So we're going to be joining you at 8 a.m. If you want to get involved with the conversation, you can reach out to us on Twitter and formerly Twitter, now X, at Londoners News. You can also use the hashtag Londoners Vote 2024, or you can keep up to date with everything going on in between our next broadcast by visiting our live blog. Please drop us anything in the comments. Let us know, how do you feel? What do you think is going to be on Starmer's first agenda? Please, we desperately want to know how you're feeling going into this new government. We will see you at 8 a.m. Good morning and welcome to our live election broadcast. I'm Bridie Monaghan.
I'm Rob Thornton.
And I'm Honor Crean.
You are watching the live election broadcast here with us at The Londoners. We have been going since 11 p.m. on the hour, every hour, bringing you the latest updates. And we can now say that we are going to have a Labour government. We have Sir Keir Starmer as the next Prime Minister.
It's been a landslide. It's been quite the night. It's been through lots of tops and turves, many different curveballs thrown all around our different ways.
It has, and if you're just waking up, Labour have won by a landslide. They've won 58 seats in London and 409 seats across the UK. We're still waiting on the last result of the Hendon recount. We had Finchley and Golders Green were a big one this evening. They have it's a majority Jewish constituency, and they've actually gone back to Labour. Not Labour, but Jeremy Corbyn actually won his seat as an independent candidate with a majority of 7,000 over the Labour candidate, who was actually heckled, wasn't he? He got a cheeky, unlucky mate from a member of the crowd. And Sir Keir Starmer, of course, won his seat. Did lose 19 votes to Elmo, though, but
was out there living his best life.
He was having a great time.
Although Jeremy Corbyn won more of his votes in his constituency than Starmer did. No,
he didn't. No, he didn't in the end.
Oh,
no, Starmer did win more. It is the worst Tory defeat in history. We can say that. They have won 9 seats in London and 120 overall. That's shocking, isn't it?
It is incredibly shocking. The Lib Dems have revived themselves for the first time since 1923 properly, and they are now the third party across the UK. They've won a three-way battle for the seat of Wimbledon, making South West London predominantly gold. And the SNP implosion has happened. Labour has gone dominant in Scotland. SNP only won 8 seats, while Labour won 37, which is record-breaking given SNP's usual hold over Scotland.
Yeah, we've also seen that the Muslim vote for Labour has collapsed across the country, with several independent candidates taking their vote rather than having that vote for Labour, which has made them fight harder for the seats in the heavily Muslim populated areas. And like we mentioned about Jeremy Corbyn being independent, really successful, carrying on I know he was previously Labour in that same constituency, but carrying on his support there as an independent candidate.
You can really see that because of Labour's stance on Israel and Gaza, it has lost some of those votes in those constituencies that they would usually have won. Yeah.
Really, really shocking. But moving forward, some of the most historical moments of tonight is when Liz Truss lost her seat. She is the first former Prime Minister to lose her seat in 100 years. She made no speech. Labour took it by a very slight majority, but a majority nonetheless. This is only one of the 4 seats that have been lost, which were previously held by Prime Ministers, although none of them standing in those seats. We can see that David Cameron's former seat, Witney in Oxfordshire, has gone red, as well as the Liberal Democrats took Theresa May's old seat in Maidenhead. Uxbridge and South Ruislip was a former constituency of Boris Johnson and has been taken red as well. So not only have the Labour really taken all of the seats tonight, they have taken quite a lot of key seats which were originally blue.
Absolutely, and the first time in over 100 years that a Prime Minister who's, in the current electoral term has lost their seat, that is a devastating blow to be hit with. William actually mentioned in our previous show that he thinks there could be a push for more change in our voting system. We currently use first past the post, however, there is a demand for proportional representation. What do you guys think about that?
So let's have a look at the stats first on this general election. So Labour, 409 seats, received 34% of the votes. Compare that to the Conservatives, receiving about 10% less at 23.7% of the votes, but receiving only 120 seats. So that's over 3 times less the seats, but only 10% less of the votes. So you can see the disparity there. Then if you move on to the Lib Dems, they had 70 seats with only 12% of the vote, but Reform UK actually had more percentage share of the vote at 14%, but they've only got 4 seats. So their votes were spread out more, not in particular areas, but they've gained a lot less seats. And then the Green Party, again, have exactly the same seats as Reform with 4 seats, but only 6.8% of the vote. So that's 8% of the vote less than Reform. So I guess there is an argument to say that with proportional representation, that would reflect more the share of the vote rather than targeted voting in each individual area.
Yeah, there is something to be said for first past the post voting, though, in the fact that, some of these more out there parties that come through and want to kick up a stink in the election that they're really, really gunning for, aren't able to completely push through with that on a first past the vote system, whereas with alternative voting or other forms of voting they maybe could have. So depends whether you are for or against that big effect there.
It's also interesting to see that we have seen voter turnout go up in the last couple of hours or so. It was originally going to be at a record-breaking low, but it's been pushed up to 60%. I wonder if we were to change the way that we have our voting systems, whether it would encourage people to vote. And I wonder this time if voter apathy was a slight bit higher than usual because of the way that we have first past the post as our voting system.
Absolutely. I know personally, for me, I was in a real conundrum this morning when I put my vote in, and I did kind of make that last minute decision. I thought all week that I knew who I was voting for, and then I changed my mind last minute, and maybe there are lots of people in that situation who kind of have taken a step back because they don't know who to vote for, or they don't feel, committed enough to just be able to put all of their eggs in one basket, as it were, and vote for this one person. Whether having some other form of voting where they could, vote for several people.
Do we think we'd see better representation through these other voting systems is the real question. But the big question will be, how much was voting restricted this year by the new laws that have come in around voter ID? Voter ID is definitely something that Rishi Sunak has massively pushed. There's been quite a lot of controversy around it in terms of not allowing young people to vote, to carry certain forms of ID as a form of voting, but older generations have been able to use what would be considered the equivalent of that form of ID. So these are sort of bus passes, so on and so forth.
Absolutely. You've got bus passes, you've got freedom passes. There are lots of different forms of ID that older generations can use, whereas it's quite restricted for young people, isn't it? It's only kind of, your provisional or your driving license and a passport, which not everyone has the funds to purchase.
But moving on very swiftly, we're going to talk about Starmer's speech. We all kind of sat through and listened to Starmer's speech. How did we feel? I mean, we've been watching this all night. We've been expecting Starmer, obviously, to get in. But watching that speech, how did it make you guys feel?
I think, I said this earlier, he is a very strong public speaker. If you compare him to the likes of Boris Johnson, Rishi Sunak, even to the likes of Liz Truss, he comes across a lot more confident. He instills a lot more confidence in the people listening to him. He's very, very confident. I'm not saying being a confident public speaker makes you a good PM.
Good leader,
obviously, proof is in the pudding. But at the same time, as a member of the public, you want to be instilled with confidence who is leading the country. And I think that is something that Keir Starmer definitely did with that speech. He stood up there, he was confident, he was proud, and he put his points across very, very well.
Absolutely. We are going through various speeches now by the main party leaders. I think I've just seen Ed Davey up there talking about his paddleboarding and bungee jumping and all sorts that he's been up to. Like we said earlier, Wimbledon was won by the Lib Dems, so was Kingston and Surbiton. It's been a majority gold for Southwest London, and we've had some key Labour seats as well.
We have, but what we have seen with the Labour vote is that they haven't won the vote within different constituencies by a landslide. Often it's been marginal, or they've lost quite a lot of it to either Green or Lib Dem, or in more right-wing areas, Reform. So again, this general election has not been about voting Labour in, but keeping the Conservatives out. So there is a wonder, can Lib Dem come back even stronger next time? Can Ed Davey
maybe so
pull more of his stunts, to the point at which can he pull enough stunts to give us a Lib Dem?
Something I found really, really interesting over the evening is some of these more affluent areas in central London turning to Labour. I know we spoke to Ellie Davis earlier, who was in, I believe, Kensington and Bayswater.
Mariah.
Which has been, in Fulham, which have been traditionally blue over the years and are turning to Labour. And we were saying earlier, just looking at that map and looking at the colours that are now on there, you're just so used to seeing a sea of blue, and to see all of those kind of inner central London seats all covered in red is really something, isn't it?
It is, and Westminster has been won by Labour for the first time. Typically quite a blue seat, and where obviously the Houses of Commons and the House of Lords sits. It is now red, which seems quite fitting given the landslide majority that Labour has just received from the rest of the country. And the red wall is back in full force. Looking just at the national map, it's just quite incredible to see that much red, including in Scotland as well, which we touched on earlier. It really has been all out for Labour tonight.
Yeah, I think I've just seen as well, this has been the lowest turnout that we've had since 2001.
Oh, wow, okay.
23 years right there.
That is quite shocking.
And we're kind of getting the impression as well that it is maybe the older generation as well. I know we just said about voter ID and it being more accessible for an older generation to vote because of the way that the new ID system has kind of turned up. But I personally feel like there's been a lot of promotion to get younger people to try and vote at the moment, whereas a lot of the older members of, I know, my constituency that I've spoken to have been very apathetic, and I've had people say to me that, you know, they're in their 60s and this is the first time that they really have not known who they are going to vote for.
You've just got to look at the reporters who we've spoken to tonight, who have come back to us after being, you know, at the counts, after speaking to these politicians, and I get the impression that a lot of the politicians have put their energies into connecting with the youth through social media, through their different initiatives. So especially with like the Greens Party as well. So yeah, I would, we don't know at the moment with the data, but I would go out there and say that maybe it is the older generation who aren't.
Yeah. I believe we still are waiting on that Hendon recount, aren't we?
Hendon recount, we are, yes.
That Hendon recount.
We've had a couple of big recounts in London.
We have.
We've had a couple, I think there was one up north, which Ruislip had to be recounted.
Oh yes,
twice.
Uxbridge and South Ruislip was recounted for the second time, and they actually had their 12th Tory cabinet minister lose their seat. That was Greg Hands, who we spoke a lot about earlier, obviously, because he has had
stationary issues.
Yes, he's had some controversy in that he has been found to be the office stationary stealer.
Should we just run through one of the biggest things of tonight was the fact that 12 of the cabinet ministers have lost their seats.
12 of them. Would you like me to take a deep breath and run through those?
Absolutely, deep breath away.
We had Greg Hands lose his seat. We had Grant Shapps, the Defence Secretary, Simon Hart, the Chief Whip, Gillian Keegan, the Education Secretary, Alex Chalk, Justice Secretary, Penny Mordaunt, Commons Leader, Lucy Fraser, Culture Secretary, Johnny Mercer, Veterans Minister, Michelle Donnellan, Science, Innovation and Technology Secretary, David Davies, Wales Secretary, Victoria Prentice, Attorney General, and Mark Harper, the Transport Secretary. Those are huge losses for the Conservative Party.
It really has been quite incredible. Plus, with Liz Truss losing her seat as well, the first former Prime Minister in 100 years to lose her seat while standing for election.
Do you know what I really am enjoying?
Yes.
I'm really enjoying that we had Rishi Sunak announce that there was going to be a general election in the rain, and now it is chucking it down out there. I am not looking forward to trying to get home in this weather. I have not brought a coat. We're currently looking outside Number 10 now, and I bet it's quite a weird atmosphere down there, do you think?
It must be very strange. I mean, when Sunak called this election, Tony Blair's anthem, It Can Only Get Better, was playing.
It was.
And now it has got better for Labour. They have won in a complete and total landslide tonight.
I remember seeing the footage of those people blaring that song out from sort of like the gates round the corner from Number 10. And they actually blew their speaker out. They were committed to blaring that song out. They blew the speaker.
Should we have a quick review of the polls? Because obviously the exit polls have usually predicted things there and thereabouts. I'm right, but over to you with what was originally our exit polls.
Yes, the exit polls were pretty much bang on at the moment for Labour. They were predicting 410 seats. They've currently got 409. The Conservatives were looking at 131 seats. They're sitting at 120. So there still are 6 seats to be announced. So they still could get a little bit closer to that. The Lib Dems were predicted at 61. They're now at 71, which is a 60-seat increase from before. The SNP have fallen victim a little bit as well. So the polls have, I think, reflected pretty much fairly what we've seen tonight, with a bit of discrepancy here and there.
Yeah, obviously Reform didn't get in as many as they thought they were going to. They've come second and third quite a bit, but they haven't actually done as well as they were originally polled to.
Seats-wise, no, but I think in terms of share of the vote, potentially,
This
but
is
again...
the lowest Conservative vote shares we're now seeing.
Wow.
22%. Well, much lower than expected. But just, going back to London being... obviously the landslide that we saw at the mayoral elections and again today, as people who live in London, how are we feeling about walking into a new, very, very red 4 years?
I am quietly apprehensive and positive.
Okay.
I look forward to seeing how they kick off and get started. We are going to be covering the next few weeks on the Londoners website, so you can find those at swlondoner.co.uk, nwlondoner.co.uk, selondoner.co.uk and nelondoner.co.uk for updates on how this Labour government kicks off in the next few weeks. I think it's going to be interesting to watch. I hope that they are able to, live up to the promises that they have made, but only time will tell. What about you, Rob?
I hate to sound sceptical, and I am optimistic, but I think the proof is now in the pudding. Labour have laid out their manifestos. They've said what they want to deliver. We've now got to give them time to work through their manifestos and deliver on what they've promised. That isn't going to happen overnight. That's not going to happen even within 3 weeks. So, I think there needs to be a period of being patient and allowing Labour to work hard to deliver on what they've kind of promised. And I think give it a year or 2 years, hopefully we'll start to see that change that they have.
Do we feel like the nation is having a breath out this morning? They're breathing out after 14 years of austerity. Suddenly Labour's back in. They've got 100 days, basically. They say their first 100 days of any new political party in are the key to deciding whether they'll make real change or not.
I don't know necessarily whether it is a breath out. I think it's just a okay.
I feel like the feel of the nation was that we needed a change. I think everyone knew that we needed a change. What that change needed to be, I'm not too sure. Is it Labour? Only time will tell. But I feel like the nation will feel like we've made the change that we want, or we've made the change that needed to happen. Now let's see what happens from there.
I really liked Starmer's speech. There were certain quotes that I really enjoyed where he said, "Tonight the people have spoken. They are ready for change, to end the politics of performance and to return to politics as a public service. The change begins right here because this is your democracy, your community and your future." Really, really powerful words from...
there's that powerful public speaking you were talking about earlier.
Ciceronian even. Quite incredible. But I think the removal from the politics of performance is a welcome change where we've been really, really kind of underneath the politics of performance for quite a while now. And we've definitely seen it across the last 6 weeks of campaigning where the Conservatives have thrown everything they can at Labour. In terms of political stunts.
We did also earlier announce that Labour had won cities of London and Westminster for the first time ever. Labour's Rachel Blake gained cities of London and Westminster, defeating Conservative candidate Tim Barnes. Now, the constituency is home to the House of Commons, and that's never previously been held by Labour. So they've not just made this huge gain seat-wise this year, but to hold that seat in particular, I think, is really, really prominent in this result.
It almost feels quite ideological. It feels very almost like a complete change of the guard. Not only have Labour won in a landslide, they have also won the seat that holds the keys to changing the way that this country is run.
We have also had some Labour holds over the last sort of 9 hours as well. We were talking to Ruth Stainer earlier, who was at Morden and spoke with Siobhan McDonough, who had actually been an MP there for 27 years. So we've had some Labour seats properly holding strong. And it was also very interesting to see Jeremy Corbyn earlier, wasn't it? Previously of Labour, but he was taken off of that seat and is now running as an independent candidate, and it's interesting to see just how much a constituency will get behind someone who is local to them. They know that they're going to support their needs in their constituency, and they're a trusted face of the community, so that's been nice to see this evening as well.
And the politics has definitely been more personal this year than before.
We only need to look at Wavy Ed Davies' fun time tour.
But also looking at, Labour's losses in, majority Muslim communities because of their lack of support over Gaza.
Yeah.
That has been a very large feature, which is not completely unexpected. But I think one particular constituency in London, Bethnal Green and Stepney, lost 39%. Labour lost 39% of their vote. For the independent incumbent instead, because of their lack of support for Gaza. We are getting ready now to hear from Starmer. What do you think he's going to say in his speech this morning? Do we have any ideas about what he
I think he's going to say the word change a lot.
Yeah. It's going to be a bit of bingo for us.
I think he's going to... I think he has realised he has exhausted that his father was a toolmaker.
Oh.
I think that we will hear the word change a lot. I think that's going to be his main point of call this morning.
And we just wanted to say thank you to all our viewers at home who have tuned in this morning and tuned in with us tonight. It's been really, really wonderful for all of us to have you here and know that you're watching at home.
It has. We hope you've enjoyed it. You can still get involved with the conversation, of course. We are at Londoners News on X and on Instagram, and we are on TikTok as well. Go and check out our TikTok page. You can see all of our lovely colleagues out in their constituencies over the past few days putting together that content for you. The hashtag on X is hashtag Londoners Count. No, Londoners Vote 2024. I got to the last hour. I got to the last hour and got it wrong on the last hour. Absolutely typical. Yes.
And a huge thank you to our reporters who have come into the studio and have been out all night at the counts. We couldn't have done it without you.
You've done a terrific job, and we've really enjoyed seeing all your videos coming in as well.
Yeah, and good luck for the copy team for the rest of today. And as you said, we can keep up with all of it. Anyway.
Yes, we're just waiting for that big old speech from Keir Starmer now, aren't we?
We're just holding our breath. I wonder what it's going to be. I wonder how long it's going to be. That's my first real question. Although I think the question on everyone's lips is, how is Keir Starmer going to pay for everything that he has promised to his voters? The IFS has said that they are not sure about his budget. He has many, many promises to make, both on health, defence spending, and education, and it will be only a matter of time whether or not he can come up with the goods, as they say.
Look at all those brollies.
It's a really British day to be British.
It is. It is.
And in politics.
We got the announcement in the rain, and now we're going to get the new Prime Minister in the rain as well.
What would you do once you sort of get through those big double doors? I do wonder always how, our next Prime Minister feels taking on that moment.
Like Hugh Grant in where he slides. That's exactly what I think Keir Starmer will do.
Are we sliding down the banister? Are we
having a bit of a boogie to his favourite tune?
As Rishi Sunak walks out those doors looking as full as he did up in Yorkshire.
He did apologise earlier in his speech, didn't he? He did take full responsibility for the Conservatives' loss over the last few hours.
He also said he'd called Sir Keir Starmer to congratulate him on his win before they had actually won the majority. He had conceded to Labour. I mean, that really shows you how much the Conservative Party really knew that this was the end for them, that their Prime Minister, their leader, decided to ring the opposition prior to the numbers saying that they had the majority. Really, really, really shocking.
It absolutely speaks volumes, really. I do just want to give a massive shout out again to our copy team who have been putting together all the articles on the live blog. They have been doing a terrific job. You can go and check those out on all of our websites this morning. And they're going to be keeping you up to date in the next couple of hours.
And Bridie, don't you want to give a shout out to a special friend of yours?
Oh, I have already done it, but I will do it again. My school friend, one of my school friends has won in South Dorset, is the new Labour MP, which just absolutely baffles me that one of my mates is a member of Parliament. How weird is that?
Hopefully not too weird. It would be quite nice if we had like quite a younger generation start getting involved in, you know, politics and started running for MPs.
Absolutely. I want to see more representation of, you know, people who are going to push for what we want and we need as well. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Less of these career politicians, more of the people who know the ground, who work on the ground.
Are we still waiting on Hendon and we are.
We're
still
waiting
on
on
Hendon.
How many recounts did Hendon do this morning? This has got to be, I think, their second so far.
You guys have been with us for 28 minutes now, and there are over 1,000 of you. So thank you so much
They're
for
waiting
tuning in.
for this result
with bated breath
and then,
over the result of Hendon, our last London constituency.
It's been quite close. I mean, it has been quite close. Maybe not as close as 20 votes, which was wasn't it? Jeremy Hunt's seat. It was within 20 votes.
It was.
Maybe it won't be that.
It was indeed. We are going to throw the Hendon result over to the copy team, unfortunately.
Yes. Sorry, guys.
We would love to sit here and have a chin wag and keep talking to you, but we are going to let the copy team announce that one, hopefully very shortly. But thank you so much for tuning in over the last 9 hours. Like I said, you can continue with this conversation on X, formerly Twitter, at Londoners News and hashtag Londoners Vote 2024. I'm Bridie Monaghan.
I'm Rob Thornton.
And I'm Honor Crean.
Thank you so much for watching.